Hi everyone, and welcome back from your second tea break. I hope that you were able to organise another wonderful morning tea for yourselves. As we know from Carlos's presentation earlier this morning, buildings that participate in the Neighbours program and rate over a period of 10 separate ratings achieve a 30% reduction in their energy consumption. And we know that this isn't just because they're doing Neighbours ratings, it's because of you, our assessor community. You are central to the success of Neighbours. So that's why we've got this session on today, to help you stand up and be counted and shape the future of Neighbours with us. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. There's a presenter's questions in the chat box above, so you can click that blue hand as you have been all through this morning, and we'll get to your questions at the end. We also are making a lot of announcements in today's presentations, both this morning but also in the one that we're about to do now. And if you have any questions about any of them or you're interested to learn more, go to our website, neighbours.gov.au, and scroll down to the news section, and we actually have a separate page for the sort of major things that we're talking about today. So my name's Monique Alfris. I'm Head of Operations and Standards at Neighbours, and I'm going to be talking you through some ways that you can stand up and be counted over the next year. I'm going to be talking through ways that we're going to simplify our certification processes for you, major improvements that we're going to be making to Neighbours rules and tools, also changes that we're making to Neighbours training this year, and also how we're planning to support your businesses over the next year. I'm then going to hand over to Andrew Buchal, who's our standards manager, and he's going to be talking us through some major work that we're going to be doing on the rules this year. And then finally, Supratik Ghosh is going to take you through the real future of Neighbours, the new sectors that we're going to be moving into over the next year, and how you can also get involved in that work. So don't forget to ask your questions on the way through, and then we'll come and answer those at the end. So first up, simplifying our certification process. So a lot of you over the years have told us that you are ready for our next generation of certification process. And I'm pretty excited to say that over the last year, the product development team under the leadership of James Elks has been working on moving us from Neighbours Rate to a brand new platform. The whole rating process is going to be online and in one place. It's going to be simple, clean, and easy to navigate. We've already trialled the platform on a few shopping centres ratings with some assessors that may be listening in here today. And we're going to be launching for all shopping centre ratings from March of next year. Other sectors will be moved onto this platform in years to come. So I wanted to give you a bit of an idea of the features that we have included in this platform, just to give you a flavour of the sorts of things that we'll be working on. So the first one is this. Many of you came to us and said, if I fill out all the information in a previous year's rating, why do I need to refill that information again if we already have it in our systems? So that's one of the things that you're going to be able to do now, is when you go in to certify a rating, you can click a button which says pre-fill, and it will significantly reduce the time you spend entering your data. This is going to help you reduce errors and improve information to clients, because you can really see what happened in the previous year. Another really exciting one is that you can now copy and paste whole tables from Excel. So we heard from you that a lot of the time you create an Excel spreadsheet where you put all of the information for your certified rating into that spreadsheet, and then you move it into Neighbours Rate or one of the other platforms that we use. Now you'll be able to take the information from that platform and copy it from the Excel spreadsheet and copy it straight into the platform. And I think that's going to be really great for a sector like shopping centres, where you may have hundreds of submeters that you're using for inclusions or exclusions. This is one of the features that got a lot of really good reviews in the trials that we did recently. And then finally, on the summary page, you're actually going to be able to compare the results to the previous year. This will allow you to make sure that there are no inconsistencies, and understand your changes before you're lodging this rating. Again, if this is something that you're interested in and you'd like to get more involved, go to our website, neighbours.gov.au, and shoot us an email. Second of all, I wanted to talk to you about some big projects that we've been working on this year. So one of the major projects we've been working on is the future of Neighbours Energy, and many of you responded to our consultation paper on this that we released and ended the consultation period on a few weeks ago. Now, if this is a project that you're interested in, there's actually another stream that's running on that piece of work at the same time as this in the conference. You'll be able to watch that video later, and there's going to be a lot more information in there for you. But I just wanted to talk to you today about two of the key changes that are really going to affect our assessor community, so that you can start to be prepared for that. The first one is that we're going to be updating the NGA factors in the underlying energy benchmarks across all of our Neighbours energy tools. So from July 2021, all of these factors are going to be updated and changed, but there is only going to be a small impact on ratings, because what we're going to do is we're going to recorrect the average for all Neighbours ratings in each state to what it was before. So that means that the average building will not see any change, and most buildings should only see a small change. Where we will start to see a slightly bigger change is for buildings that are mostly powered by electricity, who will see a slight improvement, and also for buildings that consume a lot of gas, because they're going to see a slight reduction in their Neighbours rating. We're also going to undertake to review and update the emissions factors periodically from now on, and we will have a prediction tool available on our website from early next year so that you can start to see how much your particular ratings that you're working on are going to change. The second change that we're going to be making as part of this project is aligning with the International Carbon Accounting Protocol. So a few years ago, additional guidance was released on how you should account for Scope 2 emissions or emissions from electricity. So this affects the Neighbours Energy with Green Power tool. There's going to be no change to Neighbours Energy. This is just for Neighbours Energy with Green Power. The first one is that buildings will no longer need to buy green power for the portion of renewables that is currently in the grid that we all pay for. So when you get your electricity bill, you're actually already paying for 20% renewables that are in the grid. That means that if you want to get to 100%, you should only need to voluntarily purchase an additional 80%. And that's what we're going to be recognising in the Neighbours with Green Power tool. The second change relates to you if you have a large solar system on the roof of your building that enables you to generate LGCs. So some shopping centres are in this boat. So they have a large solar system, they're allowed to generate LGCs. If that building makes the decision to then on-sell those LGCs to someone else, they will no longer be able to count that clean energy within their Neighbours Energy with Green Power rating. Again, I know this is a lot of information. I've only done a couple of slides on it today. If you're really interested in it, please go to our website and go down to the news section, because again, there'll be a whole page on this. Alternatively, you can listen to the stream, the video of the other stream that's been running at the same time later on after the conference. Another big project that we've been working on this year that relates to assessors is the update to the energy and water rules for offices that we undertook. The update looked to simplify and clarify the content. It also brought together separate rulings and learnings from successfully applied rulings that we had applied on a case-by-case basis. So now those can be used by all buildings. We also moved all the documentation requirements into one place, so it was really easy for you to understand what you need to collect and provide when you undergo a level 2 audit. We also made the decision to separate out the metering and consumption information, and that's because we're going to be moving into new sectors, and we wanted to make it as easy as possible for you to move into those new sectors as well. And what this means is that you actually already know half of the information that you need to collect from all of the previous sectors work that you do. It's also going to make this information much easier for us to update and maintain in the future. Now, we know that when we make big changes like this, it costs you, our assessor community, time and money. We understand that, and we don't take these changes lightly. But the alternative is that if we don't make these updates to the rules, then they become more and more difficult to understand that over time. They don't respond to industry trends, and we end up having to do more and more case-by-case and building-by-building rulings. We do know, however, that a lot of you have been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and so given that, we've actually extended the transition period for these for the move to these new rulings until for another couple of months until the end of August. So we still have another 6 weeks before you need to move over to these rulings. We're going to use the next 6 weeks or so to help provide some additional guidance, some additional training, and potentially release a small change to these documents based on some feedback that we've already received from assessors. If you have any further feedback on them, please do let us know. We really encourage you to start looking at it through the lens of how you would apply it to individual projects. All right, so we're super interested to know how you've been going with these, because we've heard from some people how they're going, but we have not heard from a lot of our assessor community how they're going with these changes. So we're going to put up a couple of poll questions to ask how you're going with the latest updates. So I think the first question should be up there for you now. So the first question is, How are you going with the adoption of Office Energy and Water Rules 4.0 and Metering Consumption 1.0? Maybe you're doing really well, thought it was a great update. Maybe you're doing well enough. Maybe we're struggling a bit with this change. That's something that would be good for us to know. Maybe you didn't realise that there'd been a change, and that might be because you're an assessor that mostly works in other sectors and not offices. So if you do a lot of shopping centre ratings or a lot of apartment building ratings, it may be that this hasn't quite come across your radar. Something to keep in mind for those other sectors is that we will start to apply the Metering and Consumption 1.0 document across all sectors after we've had a bit of a go at it. Great, so I can see that quite a few of you have responded so far. I might get the moderator to close the poll so that I can have a look and see how we're going with those responses. Just waiting for those responses to come through. We are super eager to hear how everybody's going. We have heard very mixed responses actually from what's come back from our assessors. Some people think it's a really great change and have been really excited to see the responses coming through, but others have come back to us with some questions and some queries, particularly around the documentation requirements. That's one area I'd really encourage you to look at. We've brought all the documentation requirements into one place, which makes it clearer, but there may have been some that you've missed potentially in the past. So, okay, it doesn't seem like I can unfortunately see your responses just yet, but that's okay. We might close that one and then go to the other one if that's possible. So the second one is, how did we do well in the release of these updates, and what could we do better? So this one you can actually select multiple responses for. So the change was implemented well. Perhaps you thought the change wasn't implemented well. You liked the small workshops, for example, that we did. The supporting reference material was useful. We needed more time to implement the change. We needed more information on the change to be provided. We'd like to see more training. And I think these are all responses that we've heard from assessors so far, so certainly interested to see who those listening in also thought of these particular ones. Oh, and I can start to see responses coming through on this one, so that's great. So I'm actually seeing quite a few people saying that the change was implemented well, so that's quite good to hear. We are seeing quite a few people also coming through and saying that they liked the small workshops to explain the changes. It's probably the most popular result that's coming through so far. We'd like to see more training. Definitely understand that one. I'm going to have a little bit more to talk about with that in a moment. And then a couple of responses coming through for the supporting material was useful. We do have a couple of percentage of people that are dialing in saying that the change was not implemented well. We're super keen to hear more from you and what we can do to help support you through this change. Just send us an email and let us know, and also go and check out the website as well for the rules improvements and updates. So we might close that poll now and move on to the next section. So there's another project that I just wanted to put on your radar that we've just kicked off. I think some of you may have already spoken to us about this one, and that's about shaping the future of the Neighbours indoor environment tool. So it's been a few years since we've looked at this tool, but we have seen really significant growth in the last few years, and so the review is looking to build on that growth that we've had so far. We're going to be considering new measures of IE, improving the user experience and reviewing the benchmark. And again, there's a page on this on the website, so please just go and have a look at that if you're interested in getting involved in this review. Next up, your Neighbours training. So you should have all received a login email last week linking you into our new learning management system. And we're super excited about this because it's going to enable us to make a lot of changes to the way that we do Neighbours training, to make it easier for you and for us to be able to provide you with content, and also for you to share content with each other as well. One of the things that it's going to allow us to do is new required and voluntary courses that we actually assign to you. So the required courses is a little bit of a change for Neighbours and might be a little bit nerve-wracking for some people on the line. The idea with this is not to make it overly onerous, but just to make sure that we've got everyone up to the same minimum standard when we do things like release a new major change to the rules like we have recently. It also helps to give us feedback as to how people are going and if they actually understand the content of the rules. So keep an eye in your inboxes for that one. It's also going to allow us to include badges to demonstrate your achievements on LinkedIn. And I think that this was also spoken about earlier today in the video, a hub to provide you with a one-stop shop for information so that you can go in there and see all of the things that we're working on that affect you, our assessor community. A couple of training opportunities that I wanted to announce today and to get across your radar. The first one is that Neighbours Essentials is going to be free until June 2021 as part of our COVID stimulus package, thanks to the Commonwealth Government. So if you know anyone that's interested and would like to learn more about Neighbours, send them to that course because it gives them sort of the bare bones of what Neighbours is. The second thing, which I'm really excited to announce today, thanks to the ARBS Education and Research Foundation, is that we have 8 partially sponsored spots for sole traders to do the Office, Energy and Water course from July of this year. The next courses are going to be running in September, so if you know of anyone that might be interested in that opportunity, please do send them to our website where they can apply for those grants. The third one is that we're going to have a 50% discount for people that identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders from the end of this year. So again, watch this space and we'll have a bit more to say on that one later in the year. Finally, ways that we're looking to support your businesses over the next year. We're always keen to hear feedback on this, so please let us know if there's anything else that we can do, but we've just got a couple of things here to talk to you about today. The first one is fact sheets to help you answer the big questions. So we know from talking to you that when you go into new sectors or you go and speak to new clients in your existing sectors, that they often have the same sorts of questions. So what we've tried to do here is do the heavy lifting so that all of that information is pre-prepared to you to those sorts of initial questions that need to be asked. Also, for when you move into a new sector, you may not actually know what those big questions are. So this also is an educative tool for you to help you understand what sort of questions you might be asked when you do move in. So those are available on our website from today. You can either use them for yourself or you can distribute them to your clients if that's something that's of use to you. The next thing that we're going to do is connect you in better with financial incentives from our government partners. So we have a plan to double the number of Neighbours users participating in the New South Wales Energy Saving Scheme. So this is a white certificate scheme for energy saving projects. Essentially, anytime you increase your star rating on a Neighbours building from 1-star rating to another half-star rating, you have the opportunity to apply for funding from the New South Wales Government for that increase. Now, I know a lot of you have tried to access this scheme before and it was quite difficult to access. There's actually just been a real rule change that has happened that should hopefully make it easier, and we're also going to be doing work to help connect you in better with that scheme. So watch this space for that. There's also a page on our website about this particular initiative as well. We're also going to be doing ongoing work with our other state government partners on similar schemes that they have in their states to do the same sorts of things. And finally, probably the best thing that we can do for you is waive our Neighbours lodgement fees, which is exactly what we're doing for the next year, thanks to the kind help from the Commonwealth Government. So we have free ratings in all of these impacted sectors and free assessor accreditation fees until March of next year as well. Important to note that it's not just energy and water, it's also indoor environment and climate active, carbon neutral in the sectors where we have those certifications. So it might be a good opportunity for your clients to expand if they're interested into those other certification schemes. So that's the end of my section. Looking really forward to working with you all over the next year to help shape the future of Neighbours. And I'm now going to hand over to Andrew Buchal, who's going to talk us through some changes to the rules.
Thanks for that, Monique. Hi everyone, my name is Andrew Buchal and I'm the Standards Manager at Neighbours. I manage a team that looks after the development, update and maintenance of Neighbours rules, rulings and other documentation our assessors use to conduct Neighbours ratings. Our team is relatively new. We've only been around for the last 10 months. We've got quite a lot planned and the purpose of my presentation today is to let you know what we've got planned for this financial year. So just a quick summary as to what we're working on at the moment. Our team's managing the ruling, managing impacts of COVID-19 on Neighbours ratings. We recently released a minor update a couple of days ago, version 3.1, that extended the validity of that ruling to the end of September. We are planning a major update, version 4.0, in the coming months, and that update will add content on waste ratings and on commitment agreements that may be affected by COVID-19. We've also been working quite a lot on a new ruling, on-site renewable electricity generation systems ruling. Now this ruling defines how to allocate energy generated by an on-site renewable system, such as on-site PV, to offset consumption within the building. We're looking to publish this quite soon, possibly over the next week, with the intent that it'll come into effect in the 1st of August. With publication of that ruling, it'll actually go through a 6-month interim period, which we're effectively trialling the ruling. So assessors will be able to use the ruling, but we will be gathering feedback and adding clarification on some of the more complex requirements. And potentially in 6 months' time, we'll be doing an update. We're also started work on a new update to the Sustainable Portfolio Index rules. That update will add content on 2 topics. We're going to clarify what buildings can and can't be excluded from the Sustainable Portfolio Index, as well as an additional appendix that talks about how the rankings are actually calculated. And lastly, we're looking at potentially providing additional guidance and clarifications for the energy and water for offices version 4.0 and the metering consumption rules. Those guidances is based on feedback we've received from assessors over the last 6 months or so. Next slide, please. So for this financial year, I've split it up into the first half and the second half. So for the first half, Q1, Q2, we're looking at undertaking 3 projects. Firstly, a major version update to the energy and water for shopping centre rules. There's 2 aims to that project. Firstly, we're looking to align this document with the new metering and consumption rules. And the second aim is to add in some additional requirements that help support the move to the new Neighbours certification platform. The second project is a refresh of the thermal metering ruling. So this is quite a large project where we're combining a couple of documents. We're bringing existing requirements up to date with current technology, as well as looking at adding some clarification around feedback and questions that our assessors have had. The third project is a refresh of the cogen and tri-generation systems ruling. Compared to the refresh of thermal metering, this isn't a large project. It's mainly clarification on requirements based on feedback we've received from our assessors. But we have flagged that we may look at updating Neighbours rate to make use of this ruling a lot easier. Next slide, please. For the second half of this financial year, Q3 and Q4, we're also looking at delivering 3 projects. The first one is a refresh of the shared facilities and shared services ruling. This is a minor update, similar to the cogen and trigen ruling, where we're adding additional content and clarification. We're also looking at doing minor version updates to the energy and water for hotels rules and the energy and water for apartment building rules. The main aim of these minor updates is to bring these documents in line with metering and consumption document. However, there may be additional changes depending on the outcome of some work being done in the background for these 2 tools. So that was a very, very quick summary of what we're planning over the next year. You might be asking now, well, how can you get involved? Next slide. So with each of these projects, we view engagement with our stakeholders as a very important part of delivering these projects. So for each one, we are looking to actively seek feedback in one form or another. For every project, we're planning to release a consultation paper that asks feedback on proposed ideas and concepts to our stakeholders. But for the larger projects, we'll also be looking to host webinars and workshops, similar to the ones that we held for the update for the office rules and for the consultation for the COVID ruling. But on top of that, we are very open to accept direct feedback. So if you've got any feedback on any of the projects that I've talked about today, or on any of the documents that I haven't talked about, please give us a call, send us an email. We're more than happy to talk and happy to set up a meeting and discuss it with you. Even if we're not working on the project at the moment, we do have a feedback and issues register, and all your feedback will go into there. And when we look at scoping future projects, we'll make sure that that's taken on board. If you want any other information on any of the projects we're working on or on how you could get involved, please go to the Rules Update Conference webpage or give us a call or send us an email. More than happy to talk. So now I'd like to pass it on to my colleague, Supra, who's going to talk about the Neighbours sector expansion.
Thanks, Andy. Good afternoon. It's great to be here and great to see so many of you tuning in. I am Supra and I manage the Neighbours sector expansion project. Over the next few minutes, I will take you through how we are expanding Neighbours to new sectors through the Neighbours Accelerate program, and how you can participate at this stage. For starters, this project is aligned with our strategic plan, where one of the goals is to expand Neighbours to all major building types, and we also want to do it a lot faster than we previously have. So you move on to the next slide. So over the last financial year, we started off with a wish list of 11 new sectors, and then through different prioritization and sector market feasibility studies, we then narrowed it down to the first 3 sectors that we want to focus on, which is up on your screen. So that's residential aged care and retirement living, general warehouses and cold stores, as well as public and private schools. As Carlos mentioned earlier today, Neighbours already covers around 30% of the non-residential greenhouse gas emissions from the built environment. With the addition of these 3 sectors, we are bringing into the fold another 20% of the emissions, which is fantastic. So the aim is to launch the rating products for 3 new sectors in the next 2 financial years. Where some of the development work will happen in parallel across all the sectors. So that's the general engagement and also the data collection piece. And then the rest of the rating product development work will happen in a bit of a staggered way for the different sectors. So that includes the development of the rules, the benchmarking, and also the subsequent launch of the products, which will happen one after the other. The other target for this year is to essentially launch our first rating product for residential aged care and retirement living this financial year. So that's by June 2021. And also worth reiterating is that this project is funded by the Commonwealth, which just goes to show their commitment towards expanding Neighbours to new sectors. And if you move on to the next slide. So this is the rating development flow, where we kick off with Neighbours Accelerate. So historically, we have primarily worked on one new sector at any given point of time. Through Neighbours Accelerate, we will now be able to work with multiple sectors and get them involved in the rating product development for those sectors. Neighbours Accelerate, broadly speaking, will have 2 different work streams. The first is data collection. So this is where we want to collect data from the different sectors on the different building characteristics, as well as their annual energy and water usage for the different buildings in those sectors. That data will then be used for our technical benchmarking, based on which robust benchmarks are created. The second work stream is the advisory panel. So for each of these new sectors, we will be creating advisory panels where we will take them through the journey of rating product development, so the likes of benchmarking and rules development, and at the same time get their feedback on what's working, what's not working, how do we strategically position Neighbours in new sectors, and so on. And once the data collection process is completed, we will then move on to technical benchmarking and then the rules development, also then deliver the assessor training and accreditation, and subsequently launch the full rating product. While we're working on the technical benchmarking and the rules development, we will also do a bit of on-site testing of the benchmarks, as well as the online platform development. And at the back of launching the full rating product, we will also work on the supporting suite of products. So that's the commitment agreements, the reverse calculators as an example. And if you move on to the next slide. So that's a bit on Neighbours Accelerate and the general rating product development. Moving on to how can you get involved at this stage. For starters, if you already work in these new sectors or have clients in these sectors, we definitely want to hear from you. The idea is to start the conversation of Neighbours in these sectors, convey the value proposition, and in turn also learn a lot more about these sectors and also understand the value that Neighbours can provide. Also watch out for assessor training. It is likely that we will deliver the first set of training sessions for accreditation in Neighbours for residential aged care and retirement living sometime in May or June next year. So this could be another service that you can potentially offer a whole set of new clients, so something to consider down the track. And also if you're already across the ins and outs of these new sectors and want to actively participate in the rating product development, the advisory panel is a great channel to do that. So please get in touch with us on any of these 3 items, and we can then funnel you through Neighbours Accelerate. If you move on to the next slide. So you can contact us directly or through the Neighbours expansion mailbox. We've also got some information on our website, and we will be progressively adding a lot more information down the track as well, so watch that space. So that's me, and I'll hand over back to Monique.
Great. Thanks to my fellow panelists. We're now going to have a look at some of the questions that you've sent through while we've been speaking. If you have questions as we go through the Q&A as well, more than welcome to have you continue to put those through. I just wanted to share the polling data from the first poll because I've had that come through now. Pleasingly, we've seen 60% of people say either it was a great update or it was a good enough update, but there have been a few challenges. So that's quite good to hear. For those of you that are having challenges, please do get in contact with us. We are super keen to know what those are because we are looking at providing more guidance in the next little while. 30% of you said, and so that's probably the majority of the remainder said, I didn't realise there's been a change. How can I find out more? And I'm guessing that quite a few of those are from assessors that potentially don't do ratings very often. You may do one a year, or maybe you're from another sector. If you don't work in the offices sector, this may not be something that you've necessarily heard very much about so far. So for those people, definitely encourage you to go to the website and take a look or get in touch with us and we can provide you with that information there as well. So I'm going to go to some of the questions that have been asked so far. So the first one was for me from Adam. He's asked, is it true that buildings will be penalised for gas use moving forward? So he's referring to the project that I spoke about called the Future of Neighbours Energy Project, where we're going to be updating the emissions factors in the Neighbours tool. So the original Neighbours benchmarks were created using the emissions factors from 1998, and we actually haven't updated those over time because, first of all, our stakeholders asked us not to update them because they wanted to be able to make sure that they were comparing their buildings' performance year on year and that it wasn't being impacted by external factors. But also, unfortunately, there was a very slow rate of decarbonisation in the grid. So we only had a small amount, we had 10% of renewables back in 1998. We only saw a small movement in that percentage over time. What we've found up to today is that we've seen a doubling of renewables in the grid. So we have around 20% renewables in the grid now. And the emissions factors have changed enough that it does have an impact on ratings in some states now. So what we are doing is updating the emissions factors to make sure that we're accurately comparing between electricity and gas in our Neighbours energy rating. So the Neighbours energy rating compares between electricity and gas by using the NGA factors, and this allows us to correctly calculate between the two of them. As the grid continues to decarbonise, we will continue to make those changes to update the emissions factor of electricity versus gas. So I hope that answers your question, but more than welcome to put in a clarifying question if you'd like me to answer that a bit more. Andrew, this one's for you. It's from Luca, and he said something that I think many of us feel, especially because of COVID has caught us all a bit blindsided, and we had to make many changes to the rules very quickly in a very short period of time, which a lot of our assessors asked for, but also found challenges with in terms of keeping up with the latest content. So Lucas said, it's hard to keep up with all the new rules and rulings these past few months. How can Neighbours make this process easier for assessors?
Okay, thanks for the question, Luca. That's a really, really good question, and it's definitely something that we've been discussing internally. As you would have seen from my presentation, we have multiple projects in the rules update team running concurrently, including stakeholder engagement for those. But then on top of that, when you're looking at all the other projects run in other parts of Neighbours, there is the potential of information overload. Traditionally, we've communicated mainly through the use of emails, EDMs, but we now recognise that to constantly use that medium is not ideal. We don't want a situation where you're either receiving an EDM every single day, or you receive an email that's pages long. So we are looking at other channels to communicate more effectively. For the rules section, we're looking at putting together a new web page which outline a bit of a timeline of when these rule projects are supposed to get to the stakeholder engagement stage when they were expected to be published. We're also looking at better integrating with some of the other platforms that we have. So the LMS system for training, we're looking at how we can better integrate with that, and just general better coordination with our other teams. So it's a bit of a watch this space, but it is definitely something that we're looking at fixing.
The next one's for Supra. So I think that this is something that's probably on the minds of quite a lot of the assessors that are on the line. Will my current accreditation be applicable for residential aged care and retirement living ratings?
Yeah, thanks, Mon. So I think starting from the big picture there, I suppose one of the key learnings for us has been that each sector are very different in the sense of their function. So while the building operations might be very similar, the functionality of it is very different. So we want to give obviously our assessors the best chance to make sure that they're upskilled in each of those sectors. A good example of that is apartment buildings, where there's the residential strata component, which is quite pertinent for assessors to be aware before they start rating buildings. So with that in mind, I think the idea is to deliver specific sector-specific training sessions for assessors who want to do ratings in those sectors. So your existing accreditation won't directly be replicated for the new sectors. So it's something that you will have to attend the assessor training, potentially pass the exam, and also depending on what we find out, there might be some supervision requirements as well, which will obviously we'll be keeping you informed down the track of all of those.
Great. Okay, I've got another question for Andy. This is from Tom. Will we see different sets of rules for each tool merged into a single document at some point?
It's a really good question, Tom. So one of the major reasonings behind developing the new media and consumption rules is that we found that different energy and water tools for different sectors had very common content. And when we were looking to update one document, we would basically be required to update potentially 4 others, simply to keep it consistent. We were also finding that if we didn't do that, when we did update one set of rules, assessors would essentially borrow the requirements from that newer tool because it was more up to date when using it. So the reasoning behind pulling that out and creating one consolidated document is to remove the potential for conflict, but also so when we're looking at, say, expanding to sectors, as Supra's work is looking at, that we'll be able to quickly expand into those sectors without rewriting the rules. With that said, there is more than enough sector-specific requirements that I don't see a situation where suddenly all the rules will be merged into one giant document. However, there is the potential for other rule documents that will cut across several sectors.
Great. Another one for Supra here. Is it possible for us to propose a sector to be listed for future sector expansion projects?
Yes, I think so. So I think just as a way of background, as mentioned earlier, we started off with 11 new sectors, and then through different feasibility studies actually narrowed it down to the first 7 that we would like to consider. So the back of the 3 sectors that you saw, we also have the likes of retail tenants, supermarkets, private hospitals, universities that we are looking into, and hopefully by the end of this year also announce what the next couple of sectors will be that we move into. So we are looking at a large scale of the major building types to expand to, but then if there are particular thoughts on why we should expand to particular sectors, of course feel free to get in touch with us and we can have that discussion.
All right, I'm going to take the next one, and it's from Adrian, who's asked, I think, a really pertinent question. How come computer count and vacancy is not top of the list for what you're working on this year? So it's not the top of the list of the ones that we're undertaking review for first, and there's a really important reason for that, and that's because we've got a bit of a watching brief to see what happens out of ratings that have used the COVID impacted data. We are keeping a close eye on that to see how results from those ratings emerge, and we are hoping to release the first set of data with our annual report in a couple of months' time. I was actually hoping to make some announcements today on what we had seen happen with ratings with COVID impacted data, but because we have a bit of a lag in our rating process, we actually haven't seen enough ratings come through yet. In some sectors and with some sizes of buildings, it's still only 1 or 2 ratings, and so it's not quite enough to see what kind of impact those things have had. We've also just made a lot of changes to vacancy and computer counts through the COVID rulings that we've just released, which are still in place. For those that didn't see the announcement earlier this week, actually, we've extended those for another couple of months. So it's not that it's not being thought of, we just have a bit of a watching brief on that at the moment. In addition, the items that we've chosen to target have been ones that we've heard from assessors are causing them the most difficulty and pain at the moment. So even though computer count and vacancy is areas that we do need to look at, these other areas that we've focused on have actually been causing what we believe to be more strife from assessors. But definitely keen to be hearing from you on what you find challenging and what sort of updates you'd like to see to those particular sections. So I think that we'll be in touch with you after this call to sort of see what else we can help you with there. So next one's for Supra again. Could you please break down the technical benchmarking process for the new sectors?
Yeah, sure. So what that involves, the starting point is the data collection. So the idea is to collect data from as many diverse buildings in the sense of sizes, operational factors, features that they have, geographic locations, so get as much of a representative sample set in the data collection as we can, and then move on to the technical benchmarking phase. What we do there is essentially a statistical regression analysis to essentially identify what are the key characteristics of the building that have a very strong impact on the energy and water usage profiles of those buildings, and then essentially do that a few times to make sure that it's very rigorous. As part of doing that, we might find some additional data gaps where we might have to again chase some very specific buildings on their data, and then again continue that process. So it's quite an iterative process of benchmarking. And then the next phase after that is testing the benchmark. So that's where we will essentially look at, all right, what does the average median or the median for Australia look like for a particular building? What does it look like for different states? What does it look like for buildings with a particular feature, without a particular feature? And then again further refine the benchmarks. And then, as also mentioned, there's that on-site testing piece as well, where we will actually almost simulate a rating process for some of our initial partner buildings to actually see if all the benchmarks that we've come to actually makes it practical and is it feasible to actually do the rating assessment. And once that's done, that's when we essentially finalize the benchmarks.
Great. So we've come to the end of our question and answer session. I know that there are a few questions on the line that we didn't get to. We are going to be answering those afterwards for you, so keep an eye on our website to see those final questions. So what's going to happen now is this session is going to end, and the screen that you're currently looking at is going to close up. You'll then be redirected to the initial page where you signed in for the conference, and you'll be able to click into the final wrap-up session for the day. So we're really looking forward to seeing all of you in there. Again, as I've mentioned quite a few times throughout this presentation, please go and take a look at our website and see the pages in there. Reach out to us if you've got any burning questions that you really want to have answered before we answer them on our website. And yeah, looking forward to working with you all over the next year. Thanks very much for dialing into this session.